Hi, I'm Larry Cohen, the board chair of Our Revolution. Great to be with all of you. And, normally I would have opened up with that, but now two other people have shouted it out, but we'll come back to it. Great to see all of you here. And so many of you I know for years. I'm not shouting out those names. I use up all my minutes. But it's great to see everybody here. Let me just say, this is a prototype in many ways of about 20 of these that are going to occur around the nation. And the first of which yesterday was in South Bend, Indiana. And if you want to read more about that, go to the website of the South Bend Tribune or ask the folks, a couple of folks here, including Joseph, were there. But it was awesome yesterday. 100 people in whose hometown? Mayor Pete. Saying, Mayor, we want to change South Bend. We want to have decent housing here. We want to end what the police are doing here. In any case, that was not part of my 3 minutes, so now I start. And I've had some eye issues, so off go the glasses. Anyway, so again, great to be with all of you. We are live streaming this to Our Revolution leaders around the country. And this one is different in that the people we invited here, it's not like an open meeting, you got invited here because you're involved in Virginia. Who's here from Virginia? That's amazing. Or you're here from Maryland, Our Revolution Maryland. And some are here from the new chapter in D.C. Who's here from So this is different in that way. And again, the folks who are watching around the country, many of them are going to be running their own event like this. And this is meant to be, well, this is what it's like. And the second thing is, we have Our Revolution board is here. We're meeting today and tomorrow. And this gives folks in this area a chance to say to them, we want to see this, and we want to see that, and we want to see this. You're all good at that. And now they're thrilled that they're here. But we do have a reception. It's not a lot of food. If anybody's hungry, you're going to be disappointed. It's too expensive here, and you don't want to spend any money on that. But in that hour, it's a good chance to meet them. I just want to ask them quickly to stand up and shout out your name, since I do have a problem with this eye. I can't see everybody. So board members, stand up and just shout out your name.
Not all at once.
Lucero Mesa.
That's South Carolina and Vermont.
Hi guys, Richard Rodriguez, way here in the back.
Illinois. That's Illinois.
Jane Clem, Nebraska.
And where's that shy guy from Texas? He only has one name, High Tower. Maybe that's two names. Who else? Okay, we're covered. There's a couple people that have family issues that are not here, unfortunately. But that's our national board. They'll be around afterwards. Okay, I'm back to trying to read this with bad eye and all. So, as you all know, we started more than 3 years ago. What Bernie said when he was running in 16 is we're doing movement building. That's why many of us, who I see here in the room, got involved in the Bernie campaign. It wasn't about necessarily winning the White House. It was about using the campaign to build the movement. And he did that beyond our dreams. 1,900 delegates elected the convention in Philadelphia. But for us, it was also the springboard to launch Our Revolution. And again, lots of heartfelt appreciation to people here in this room from D.C., Maryland, Virginia, for carrying that revolution on. Because in fact, even now in 2020, when Bernie is in it to win it, different than the last time, in it to win it, but even now, number one, to win it, we need a movement. And number two, we need to carry it on beyond the convention in Milwaukee. And while the campaign is focused on that nomination, we are focused on 2020, the entire year. And that means elections at every level. We have some great electeds here with amazing stories you'll hear. It means the issue work we're doing, whether it's fighting the climate crisis at the local level or the national level, whether it's fighting for Medicare for all and getting members of Congress to join Jayapal. We now have a majority of the Democrats, but that's not good enough. Whatever, and local issues that really drive the organizing, local elections, local party building, right? Local party building. Running for delegate. You guys should be running for delegate in your states or in D.C. we want to have great delegates elected, whether our revolution or our allies, because take it from me, who spent 2 years on this Democratic Party reform. I won't use my minute on that. I'm about out of time here. But the only way we're going to make a difference in Milwaukee is to have delegates that are there to organize and there to fight. It's not going to drop out of the sky. So run for delegate. And so for us, so for the campaign, right, that's about these first 4 or 5 primaries, including California. Very hard for any campaign, even Bernie, to staff up beyond that. For us, it's about the 50 states. It's about D.C. It's about the 5 territories, even the Democrats abroad. All 57, 54 primaries, 3 caucuses. But beyond that, it's about all the other people nominated in those situations. It's about the people who run for delegate, run for county executive in more than 3,000 counties. And it's working with allies to make that happen. So it's local organizing, city by city, county by county, state by state, that we build our power. And that's making a difference. And again, you're going to hear a lot about that. But for example, in 2019, our revolution endorsed about 100 candidates, and a majority won their election. And many of those who didn't made it, and you're going to hear from 1 who didn't and 3 who did. And they all made a difference in terms of movement building. That's our criteria. It's not looking for easy elections to tally up a scorecard. It's about making a difference through the election. And that's the triangle we talk about. Growing groups, and then through an election, working on our issues, through an election, changing the party, and how those 3 sides relate to each other. So, for example, over the past year, we passed local ordinances. This is not just in this area, but around the country, to expand affordable housing, tackle the climate crisis, hold police accountable. That's a big issue in South Bend. Not only that, we helped helped get, with allies, a majority of Democrats, as I mentioned, to sign on to Medicare for all. So, when we organize, we win! What's the solution? Our revolution! But we're not just here to celebrate the past. We're here to fight and work for the future, organize for the future, grow every group that's in this room. Many different group leaders are here and watching on the live stream. Now I want to bring up a friend who I've known for a long time in terms of the many things that he's done. 20 years in organizing, union organizing, Good Jobs Nation, and since April, the leader of our revolution. The whole staff, as he would tell you, small staff, they're amazing. His leadership has been amazing. I couldn't be prouder than to introduce him here. Joseph Key Varghese, the Executive Director of our revolution. Joseph. So give it up for Brother Larry Cohen, our chairman leader. He is a true revolutionary. For decades has been fighting to make sure that every human being has an opportunity to live the life they are called to live. So again, thank you, Chairman Cohen. Okay. So, brothers and sisters, we all know this. 2020 is a must-win moment for Bernie and our entire progressive movement. It's the best opportunity that we have to transform our political system and take back power from the corporate elite who are destroying our country and our climate. We know that there are more of us than there are of them. And if we come together and organize, we will win. Brothers and sisters, that's what we are gearing up to do here at our revolution. Yesterday, I was in South Bend, Indiana, for our first in the nation Organized to Win 2020 event. I was there to stand in solidarity with hundreds of our revolution members who came together to speak truth to a powerful political establishment that has ignored their voices for far too long. We heard from Noelia, an immigrant rights attorney. She spoke about how she's struggling to pay off $237,000
in student debt. That's right, 237,000. Like, my God. As a result, that's right, it's not right. As a result, she told us that she and her husband made a decision. They're not going to have kids. She and her husband made a decision. They're not going to buy a house. What kind of America is that? Is that the America that you want to live in? No. Larry also shared a story. Larry was a factory worker at the Honeywell plant in South Bend for 37 years. He shared how the corporation, a profitable defense contractor, slashed retiree health benefits, and then, to add insult to injury, shipped jobs to Turkey. This is under Donald Trump. Ogechi, a recent college graduate, talked about how Obamacare failed to cover the full cost of her mental health care treatment. After she attempted suicide, she got a $6,000 bill. Is that the America you want to live in? No! Kat Redding talked about how her brother-in-law and other African Americans have been gunned down by an unaccountable police force. Is that the America you want to live in? No! And Jordan Geiger, our co-leader of our group in South Bend, talked about how gentrification is displacing generations of South Bend residents. Brothers and sisters, yesterday our members came together to put the South Bend establishment on notice. They announced that they are going to build a local political progressive powerhouse to make sure that South Bend works for every single resident, not just the wealthy few. Brothers and sisters, our work in South Bend is important because if we organize locally, we have a path to win nationally. I want to say that again. If we organize locally, we have a path to win nationally. Brothers and sisters, the truth is that South Bend is no different than any other city and town in the United States. From coast to coast, the American people are struggling. They are struggling to live the American dream. They can't afford an education. They can't afford a house. They can't afford to have kids. They can't afford health care. And in too many places in our country, people aren't organized to take power and create the life that they are called to live. And that's why our revolution is holding Organized to Win 2020 kickoff events, organizing events in cities large and small all around the United States. We're ramping up our local organizing to build a national political progressive powerhouse. In the coming months, we'll be holding kickoff events just like this in over 30 cities, like Nashville, Tennessee, Columbus, Salem, Olympia, Detroit, Houston. Right, because the political revolution doesn't just start in Iowa and New Hampshire and the early voting states. It starts right here with the grassroots in every single state in the union. And it's not just that we're having these one-time events, right? We are organizing around a long-term plan to win local political power. In every community, our leaders are volunteering to have one-on-one conversations with tens of thousands of our revolution email supporters. Right? Everyone here gets our emails? Yep. Well, the truth is the people who read our emails are the most salient folks in our universe. They are the folks, right, who we can move, we must move from being online collectivists to being on the street activists. And that's what our groups are doing all around the country. We are contacting our email supporters and saying reading an email is not enough, clicking on a link is not enough. The revolution needs you to volunteer, to door knock, to run for office, right? The revolution needs you to win. And through our Organize to Win 20 campaign, our members are going to come together at a local level to define an issue agenda, right? They're going to come together to identify a slate of candidates, progressive candidates, up and down the ballot that will run with Bernie, that represents the values of Bernie Sanders and our movement. And not only that, in every community, our folks are going to organize to take over a Democratic Party that does not represent the will of the people. So, brothers and sisters, I want to just bring this home. By organizing locally, we can win nationally. Every movement in this country, every social movement, whether it's the civil rights movement or the fight for 15, started in a local community where people stood up to speak truth to power, right? And that's what we are called to do. And by doing that, we can build a powerful army and we can win. By organizing locally, we can win health care for every single human being. Because when we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. By organizing at the grassroots, we can end police brutality. Because when we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. By organizing, we can elect progressives and we can transform the Democratic Party. Because when we organize, we win! When we organize, we win! At every summit, including the summit that's right here in D.C., we're asking our members to sign a card. There are cards in your seat. And we're asking you to make a commitment. Make a commitment to volunteer, to donate, and to recruit others into our revolution, because the key to the revolution is power. And power is this: it is organized people, it is organized money, and it is organized people and organized money moving around an organized program. And that's our Organize to Win 2020 plan. Brothers and sisters, will you sign a card and commit to Organize to Win in 2020? Yeah! I can't hear you. Are you ready? Yeah! Brothers and sisters, don't doubt the significance of your personal political commitment, because at the end of the day, in the stories you're about to hear and the stories I laid out, what is deeply personal is always political. And I want to end with a quote from Margaret Mead, my favorite organizing quote, who once said, "Never doubt that a small band of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." When we organize, you're now going to hear from a powerful lineup of speakers who represent our national leadership, people who are organizing in places from Texas to South Carolina, our board members. They're fighting on specific issues in each of these places. And you're also going to hear from local activists from Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. who are fighting here at the grassroots. So to kick it off, I want to turn it over to my good friend and comrade, Jim Hightower, the leader of our revolution in Texas.
Thank you, Joseph. What a great opportunity to follow up with you and to come behind Larry Cohen. I've been working with Larry for years, trying to get him to break out of his shell and just say what needs to be said. It's a joy to be here with you DCers and Virginians and Marylanders in this great fight against inequality, because that's really what it comes down to. You know, we're battling what I call the 6 V's: the bosses, the bankers, the billionaires, the big shots, bastards, and the bullshitters. And nowhere is that power of inequality more disgusting than in the area of healthcare.
That's right.
And our revolution is taking the lead on that issue, going forward with it, as Bernie has for years. Here we are, the richest nation, not just in the world, in the history of the world. Yet we've got people struggling to get this basic health care. It is a national travesty, can we say, that thousands of people die each year because they don't have adequate health care. It is a national travesty that we spend twice as much per capita on health care than any other nation, yet get the worst results. It's a national travesty that 1 in every 6 Americans is saddled with past-due medical bills, a debt. Medicare for all is the solution. Yet we have a whole new group that's come out, fraidy cat Democrats. Who say, oh my, you can't talk about Medicare for all, that scares people. Well, hello, I say Medicare for all a lot, and it doesn't scare people. They stand up and cheer. You might have seen earlier this week, New York Times poll, 81% of Democrats support Medicare for all. Apple pie doesn't get that high. Right? No. And Medicare for all is the solution, because not only is it the answer, but we can afford it. Now that's the lie that they're putting out is, oh well, we can't afford this. You know, we just, everybody, I mean, we can't cover everybody. Well, number one, we could save $500 billion if we streamline the corporate overhead and the bureaucratic BS. Healthcare providers. We could save another $150 billion by cutting Big Pharma's price gouging. And we could continue the current government spending all across the board on health care, which now is about $1.8 trillion, and add a 10% payroll tax on all employers and contractors, and that is less than they are now paying. So they will benefit as well, and that will provide the money to cover every single American, and every single, not just CEOs and Congress critters, every single man, woman, and child in America would have full health care coverage, including dental and vision, mental and long-term health care as well. You don't have to be in who's who to know what's what, do you? I mean, what's what is that Medicare for all is what we must have. We cannot afford not to have Medicare for all. That's what our nation needs. And that's why our revolution has been going across the country. We've had an emergency ambulance traveling around, going to congressional offices and homes all across, trying to rally dozens of congressional districts this summer to push the bill that Bernie is carrying, and also Pramila Jayapal is carrying in the House, to rally support for, as we call it in Texas, Medicare for y'all. Why shouldn't we have it too? And as you probably heard Bernie say many times, healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And some say we can't pass this, but I guarantee you we can. Again, I've been just about every place that's got a zip code, and I can tell you those folks are rallying. They want Medicare for all. The insurance giants and their corporate whores They've got the fat cats, but we've got the alley cats. This is not just a coalition of those of us who want Medicare for all, for our personal families and et cetera, but it is a campaign for everybody. We've got doctors, nurses, musicians, they don't have health care. Farmers, they don't have health care. We can rally a broad coalition here behind this program. And we're going to hear now from a lady who's in front out there in Montgomery County, Dr. Laura Kaplan, our Revolution Montgomery activist, and talking about what it really means, not just to patients, but also to doctors.
That's right.
Hi, my name is Dr. Laura Kaplan-Wiseman, and thank you all for coming today. Thank you to all of our great speakers. I'm a family physician, and I'm from Rockville, Maryland, and I'm an Our Revolution Montgomery County activist in the Medicare for All movement. As a primary care provider, I know firsthand that the Affordable Care Act does not protect average Americans from the ravages of our for-profit system. Since the implementation of Obamacare, the rising costs of insurance premiums, co-payments, and deductibles have far outstripped the minimal wage increases most workers enjoy. Many patients, insured though they may be, grow sicker every day because they do not have the money to pay the out-of-pocket costs that are absolutely essential for their health care. Meanwhile, the bottom lines of health insurers, pharmaceutical companies, and for-profit hospitals have ballooned to morbidly obese levels. Is that okay? No! It is not okay. One of my patients, for example, is an insured. He has health insurance. He's 38 years old. He's a teacher. He has diabetes and high blood pressure. His conditions went untreated for years because he couldn't afford the co-payments to pay for his medications, for his doctor visits, and for the supplies to check his blood sugar. Is that right that teachers who have health insurance can't afford to treat their diabetes? No! He would send me messages through our electronic health record, sending me his sugars and his blood pressures and saying, but I can't afford the medicines and I can't afford the supplies anymore, so I'll text you again when I can. Is this okay? No! Anyway, recently he had to go on short-term disability because he hadn't received the care that he needed, and his diabetes and blood pressure got so bad that he couldn't work. He left his students for months with a teacher, and then he had a newborn child who had a sick father who couldn't take care of him. It broke my heart to take care of this patient. In their insatiable greed for ever greater profits, the healthcare insurance companies are burning physicians out at unprecedented rates. Most of us physicians enter the field of medicine to help people, but the doctor-patient relationship is eroded by untold hours negotiating prior authorizations, medication formulary changes, and referrals in ever-changing narrow networks, as well as payments from visits from an array of plans offered by different insurance companies. Every time I prescribe a new medication, I have to tell my patient, I get 20 minutes per patient, I have to tell the patient, well, when you find out it's not covered by your insurance company at the pharmacy, call us back and we'll change it. When you find out that your x-ray or your mammogram, your CAT scan isn't covered, call us back and we'll call your insurance company and get back to you in a couple of weeks. It just slows down the process for care and makes people not able to get the care that they need, and it's not okay.
Not okay.
Not okay. All of this takes an emotional and financial toll on doctors, especially those in small practices and in rural areas. It is no surprise that America is experiencing a nationwide primary care physician shortage. As a medical doctor, I know the prescription for our nation is universal single-payer health care. And that's why I stand with Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Pramila Jayapal. That's why I'm fighting with Our Revolution for both federal and state legislation guaranteeing health care as a human right now. Thank you.
It's very hard to go after my friend Jim Hightower. As I told him, it's not possible really to follow him, so I won't be as good. But anyway, I'm also on the board of Our Revolution. My name is Huck Upman, and I'm here because I was a college professor for 50 years, and I think that means I know something about higher education. And what I know is that higher education is responsible or is necessary for people to work in the workplace and to fulfill their lives. And one of the issues facing America right now is lack of access to higher education. By higher education, I don't only mean college or community college. It's also technical school. It's also trade school. When America was founded, and then through the 19th century, more and more people had access to education, first K through 6 and then K through 12. And it made us the strongest and the freest and the most democratic nation in the world. Now, often people need more education than that, either in college or in trade school or in junior college, but they need something more to succeed both in their own lives in this complex world, but also in the marketplace where they want to earn a living and where the demands are ever more complex. I also know that the high cost of tuition, and tuition has been rising everywhere. The high cost of tuition can saddle graduated students with huge and unaffordable amounts of student debt. Worse, even that the students have that debt, many students don't even think of going to college because they know it will cost so much and they will be saddled with debt. So that kind of expectation that I can't go to college, I can't go to technical school, I can't go to trade school is one of the results of the high cost of education. I want to talk to you a little bit today about what it means that so many people graduate with debt. Many of you have that debt still. I talked to somebody today who's in her 40s with a child in college who is still paying off her debt and her husband's debt even as they accrue their child's debt. Wow. More than 46 million Americans, that's really a lot of people, are suffocating because of student debt. That debt is $1.6 trillion. My friend Bernie likes to talk about numbers. $1.6 trillion is really a lot of money. It's like 10% of the gross domestic product. And it all goes to paying off student debt. I should add parenthetically that President Obama, I'm the only one who's going to mention his name here, was saddled with debt even when he became president. It's only when he had a best-selling book he could get out of all that debt. So college debt is enormous, and Congress and the various administrations in the United States, in their collective wisdom, decided that the failed banks would be bailed out at lower interest rates than students paid for their college debt. It used to be that students could go to state universities tuition-free. It was an access to the world ahead of them. But no longer. Tuition mounts higher and higher, and today even public universities charge exorbitant tuitions. Bernie and Representative Ilhan Omar in the House have introduced bills in Congress to cancel out all student debt, to let people go forward in their lives. The impact of this would be transformative. It's not only that the lives of so many people would stop having to be put on hold. They can't buy a house, they can't have children because they're paying off student debt, but it would add $108 billion per year to our economy and create 1 million jobs. So this is a jobs program, not only a debt program. People are paying off debt, the bankers, instead of our using that money productively to create jobs and to create infrastructure in America. So I'm proud to announce today that our revolution will be kicking off a campaign to organize to pass the Sanders-Omar legislation. We will cancel student debt, and we're going to hear about why that debt is so crippling from a leader in the movement to cancel student debt, Clayton Northcroft, who will be talking to us next. Clayton was forced to defer his own dreams of going to college because of student debt. We owe it to young people like Clayton to give students today and students from the past and students in the future the world that they deserve. Welcome, Clayton.
Hello, hello, how y'all doing? Alrighty, thank you. I'm a little nervous. Let me get these nervous jitters out of me. Here we go. Thank you, I need you guys to feel the energy with me. Alright, let me just start off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, that the state of the revolution clearly is very, very strong right now. But brothers and sisters, the state of our union is facing many crises, and I am honored to be here tonight speaking about education and the student debt crisis. I am also here tonight to express my support for Senator Bernie Sanders and his revolutionary ideas that will transform this country. So my generation was told that if we wanted to get the best paying jobs, that we would have to go to college and get a good education. So in 2009, right after high school, that's what I did. And to make a long story short, because I don't have too much time, my first year of college did not go as planned. I don't think I was quite ready for life. So what I did is I just took a short little break. And something else happened in 2009 with my generation. And that was the excitement for the future of our country. We just elected Barack Obama as the President of the United States of America, and we were so excited. And we were so inspired, and we were ready to see our country go down the political path of for the people, by the people. And then we fast forward to 2015, and I just witnessed our country go down the political path of for the corporations, by the corporations, and to be honest with you, I started losing hope. But it wasn't until Bernie Sanders gave us a glimpse of what his vision for America was that got me excited about the political path our country was about to go on. One of my goals in life is to become an early childhood educator. I've always wanted to be an elementary school teacher because I got to witness firsthand what it's like to have amazing teachers at such a young age. But I never ever imagined that my dream of becoming a teacher would have so many financial obstacles and roadblocks. So in 2017, after that short little break from 2009, I enrolled at my local community college, and I went to the financial aid office, and they told me that I made too much money to get assistance, and the only thing I could do was take out student loans, even though I was living paycheck to paycheck. So my only option was student loans, so that is what I did. I couldn't afford to pay out of pocket for college. And I remember the first year of 2017, that was my first year in college, taking out loans. I was excited. It was very inspiring, and I was excited to be back in school. And then something happened that happens to a lot of Americans. My car broke down. So that was the end of the road, literally, for my car and for my education. I now have about $10,000 in student loans, and I don't even have a degree. So here I am today at 28 years young, working as a bartender at the Guinness Brewery in Maryland. What's up, Guinness? They're watching me on live stream. So. Thank you, Benji, for taking my shift. And you know what? I'm okay with being a bartender because the last time I checked, bartending is the last stop before you get elected into the House of Representatives. This car payment, and if I told you my car payment, you would think I was driving a spaceship to work. But with this car payment, and now I just purchased health insurance through my job. I am fortunate to have health insurance through my employer, so thank you, but it is another expense. So I don't have the money to go back to school because I don't have the money, and I don't want to dig myself into more debt. So real quick, I have to tell this story. One of my coworkers, because she told me she couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to do this for her. She told me on Thursday, she says, hey, I got a story for you. I am over $80,000 in student loan debt. And because of that, her monthly payments are $700 a month. And her mother cannot retire because she is helping not only her, but her 3 brothers and sisters pay off their student loan debt. And she looked at me and she said, Clayton, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I looked at her and I said, oh, there's light because there's a political revolution. And that political revolution is happening right now in our country, and she knows it because she has a Bernie Sanders sticker on her bumper. But sometimes we have to pick each other up. And I told her, I was like, we're going to do this, and please live stream and get ready and get everybody involved. And this is why I support the idea by Bernie Sanders to cancel all student debt. Most of the people in this country who have student debt are people like me. They are people like me. We don't make the big bucks, and getting out from under the debt would be a huge relief to us and a big boost for the economy. Bernie's plan would save the average borrower around $3,000 a year. The other part of this solution is to eliminate tuition and fees at community colleges, four-year public colleges and universities, trade schools, and other institutions. And that would allow me to return to school and restart my journey to becoming a teacher. And let me just say this. I am also supporting Bernie Sanders because he also has a plan to fully fund historically black colleges and universities in this country. And it is time that we stop treating poverty as a crime in the richest country. When people tell me we cannot achieve these ideas because we don't have the money, I refer them back to 2008. When Wall Street came to the American people after their recklessness and after their greed, and they asked us to bail them out, and now we're coming to Wall Street, and we're telling them it is your turn to bail out Main Street. Sorry if I sound a little angry, but if you're not mad, you're not awake, ladies and gentlemen. And when people tell me that these ideas are too big and they cost too much money, I will refer them to the military-industrial complex. And the pointless oil wars, and when it comes to the military, and when it comes to the wars, we just write blank checks at the expense of the taxpayers. So I don't want to hear we don't have the money, because this is America, and this is the richest country on earth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. I know all the people speaking before me were so good, so I am going to try to do my best. My name is Lucero Mesa. I am originally from Colombia, South America. When I got married, I moved to Venezuela with my husband, and in 1986, we came with our youngest daughter to the United States for my husband to pursue his PhD. And when we were ready to go back to Venezuela, that was initially the plan. Things were getting bad there. So we decided that we wanted to try to stay in the United States. At the time, we didn't realize what we were getting into because we didn't know how the immigration process was so convoluted, so complicated, so stressful, and actually so expensive because we only didn't get one lawyer. We lost our money. We have to hire another lawyer to be able to go through the process. And then when I was already working, I received a call from my lawyer saying, well, we didn't file your paperwork on time, and then you have to go home because otherwise you're going to be deported. Well, that was a catch-22 because without the job, I couldn't keep my working visa. So I was very lucky that my advisor at the university knew a very important person, and that person made the right call, and in one day, I have the paperwork to go back to work. But then, if we think about it, what if you don't know somebody who knows a VIP? Right. What if, at the time, we already own a house, and my husband and I have decent jobs, and we have 2 daughters that were born here. So the question was, or is still, what if we decided to stay here and become undocumented. Our oldest daughter would be a DACA student. Now she is a very successful medical doctor. So you see everything that happens with the immigration process that is just so horrible. Well, Jasmine Taib understands what this is like. After coming to this country as an undocumented immigrant more than 30 years ago, she spent years fighting for sensible immigration reform. And she continues fighting despite the ever-growing list of inhumane policies the Trump administration has imposed. These policies are making life even harder for people seeking safe haven in our country from unimaginable atrocities and those seeking a better life for themselves and their families, as people like Jasmine have done since our nation was founded. This administration has deported 800,000 people. Is that humane? No. And at any given time, there are more than 50,000 people detained by ICE.
Break up the ICE! Break it up! Abolish ICE!
Yes.
ICE is never safe.
That's the highest number detained in our history. Is that humane?
No!
Prosecute ICE! Yes. Who can forget the images from the horrible detention centers that hold families and children, many separated from their families? This deportation and detention is also a big business. Massive corporations are raking in massive profits by shattering people's dreams and defying the very ideals our nation was founded on.
That's not right.
People over profit!
That's right.
That's why a revolution teamed up with Senator Jeff Merkley and the Lives of Liberty campaign to mobilize thousands of our members to fight to close those camps.
That's right.
I support Senator Bernie Sanders because he will reinstate and expand DACA and DAPA and develop a humane policy for those seeking asylum. He will completely reshape and reform our immigration enforcement system, including breaking up ICE and customs and border protection and redistributing their functions to the proper authorities. He will dismantle the inhumane deportation program and detention centers and reunite families that have been separated.
Let's do it.
Yeah!
Now, I want to introduce Jasmine Taib, and a revolution member from Virginia, who will share her story about why this issue is important to her and our members, many of whom have been victimized by this cruel and inhumane system. Welcome, Jasmine.
Great. Thank you so much, Lucero. I'm Yasmin Taib. I'm an activist and a human rights lawyer. I'm also a 2019 former OR endorsed state senate candidate in the state of Virginia. So I wanted to take a quick moment to thank the OR activists from Nova, from DC, from Maryland that I see all across the room who came out to our district to knock on doors, to make calls, to ensure that we have progressives elected in the Virginia General Assembly that will fight for a progressive agenda to get corporate money out of politics, to ensure we repeal Virginia's anti-union, racist, right-to-work law. Who will fight to ensure that Virginia transitions completely to a clean energy economy. So as some of you know, I came to the U.S. as an undocumented immigrant when I was in the 2nd grade. Now, as a citizen and a lawyer and activist, it saddens me to say that I've never seen the assault on our immigrant brothers and sisters that we see today. From Donald Trump's Muslim ban to the separation of families at our border to turning away refugees, we must act quickly and forcefully to end this unconscionable exercise of government power and discriminatory policies advanced by this administration. My views on this issue. My family and I, as Lucera pointed out, fled a brutal war in Iran and came to the U.S. with nothing but the clothes on our backs. That experience of crossing the border in Tijuana when I was 7 shaped the course of my life. Today, when this administration shuts down our refugee resettlement program, deports vulnerable immigrants, closes our doors to refugees and migrants fleeing poverty, violence, and persecution, or when I hear elected officials on Capitol Hill demonize refugees, I think of my own family. This country and my home of Northern Virginia have given me everything. That's why I fight on the front lines to ensure every one of my neighbors is afforded the same opportunities that I had. I believe the Democratic Party is at its strongest when it defends diversity and welcomes choices. That's why I admire Senator Sanders, because of his commitment to fighting for the most vulnerable in our communities. As Americans, we have an ethical and moral obligation to live our values and be a light and hope for those fleeing terror without regard to one's religious or ethnic background. I'm standing before you today because of Americans who believed in that ethic of welcoming the most vulnerable. I was given a chance. I wasn't turned away at the border. I wasn't kicked or separated from my mother. I wasn't kept out of school because I didn't have documentation. When immigrants are under attack, what do we do? Fight back! When immigrants are under attack, what do we do? Fight back! We need to fight collectively for progressive and inclusive government that works for everyone, not just the powerful few. While there are powerful forces at work trying to exclude so many voices from our national discourse, I'm proud to be part of a movement fighting to ensure those voices are brought back into the fold. Together we can reject the hate and divisiveness spewed by some and ensure that ours is a welcoming and safe nation for all.
Yeah, that's right.
Here in the DMV area, in the U.S. and globally, I'm proud to fight alongside you.
Democratic Party and part of the Our Revolution. I know many of you in the room for our decades-long fight against the Keystone XL pipeline, which despite President Trump thinking that it's built, it's not. We have them on hold, and we continue to keep them on hold until we can elect Senator Sanders. For 20 years, fill out this card. If we don't have you as part of the revolution, we can't win elections and we can't create change.
That's right. That's right.
So climate change is here. There is no question about it. So the right-wing politicians on Capitol Hill and in our communities might try to pretend that climate change isn't here, but it's at our front doors. It's in the fields of Nebraska. We are seeing 200-year floods come every 20 years. And so we need to do everything we can to take climate action now. And I'm going to say something a bit radical, something that some environmental groups don't even say, something that a lot of our Democratic candidates running for president don't say. We cannot say that we're taking action on climate change and continue to build out fossil fuel infrastructure. That means no new pipelines. That means no We're here to say no more. This also means that we can't leave behind our union brothers and sisters who often have good paying jobs in the fossil fuel infrastructure. This is not us against them, which is exactly where big oil wants us and where the Republican Party wants us. They want unions and environmentalists at each other's throats. We know that the only way we can combat climate change is no fossil fuel infrastructure and building out new clean energy, which means those jobs can't be $15 an hour jobs. Those have to be good paying union jobs. Our revolution deeply believes that we not only have to be fighting in the streets, but we also have to be fighting for reform inside the Democratic Party. Why the purchase fight directly with Chair Perez is demanding a climate change debate. And while we were not successful in getting that climate change debate, we moved the needle forward. What did happen as a result is we now have the DNC Environmental and Climate Crisis Caucus. That would have never happened without that push. And our revolution leader from Michigan is leading that caucus, Michelle Dietrich. And so we have our revolution leaders, like myself, inside the DNC pushing for reform. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to take this fight everywhere, from Congress to our local communities. As chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party and the head of Bold, Nebraska, I'm on the front lines of the Keystone XL pipeline. And as I've written in my book called Harvest the Vote, How Democrats Can Win Back Rural America, comes out January 21st. You can pre-order now. Oftentimes, just like they try to demonize people who are fighting pipelines as terrorists, which is the most ridiculous thing, we've also seen farmers and ranchers be demonized when it comes to climate change. And I can tell you this, they are taking climate action right now. They're installing solar and wind. They're installing cover crops. They are installing water sensors. We have to come together as a community and not let the Republican Party and big oil continue to divide us. Like the people that are going to come up and speak right now, that's when real change happens. In Montgomery County, Maryland, which is the home to several of our nation's most diverse communities, the climate crisis is not only an issue about land and water, it's an issue about justice. And as we've seen around the globe, climate change is having a disproportionate impact on rural communities and on communities of color. This is how they try to continue to keep us down. But that's why I'm proud that County Executive Mark Elrich and our local revolution activists have been working together to tackle environmental issues right here in our backyard. Our work is most powerful when it's intersectional, when we don't let our differences divide us. And climate action is one of those issues that brings us all to the table. We are all seeds of resistance. And let's keep on growing together to build a strong movement and get those folks elected like Mark Elrich.
I want to thank you all for having the opportunity to come here and speak today. Fortunately, it's not too far for me to come. I can take the metro down here, and it's actually pretty simple.
I did too.
I really think this is important. I ran for county executive last year. I won the primary and I won the election. I had amazing support from the Bar Revolution and the progressive community. And it took it because the Washington Post wrote more editorials against me. They didn't even write editorials for people. They don't want to waste any time on that. They wrote editorials against more than they've ever done against any candidate ever. I ran against a self-funded millionaire who outspent me about 7-1. I want to say I was publicly financed. Public financing. I spent 12 years on the county council. I lost 4 elections trying to get on the council. Before that, I got on my 5th time. I was always the least funded candidate ever. But with public financing, I actually hit $1 million. And I hit it in the primary, and then I turned around and got it in the general. And I got it because of a movement like this that was willing to do the work and talk to people and get the message out there. big people who worked hard beat big money.
That's right.
They beat the developers, they
right.
beat the Washington Post,
That's right.
and they beat self-financed millionaires. So I gotta thank you for that. So I just finished my first year in office, and last week we signed our first racial equity legislation. It was one of the things I said we are going to apply a racial equity lens to all of the county policies. We're going to start thinking about what we're doing. We're going to make sure that we don't rezone a place in a way that assures that I displace all the people who live there, which our planning board has tried to do twice and finally succeeded in a third place. We're going to make sure that our zoning and other county policies do not displace people, do not make it harder for people to live in what is already one of the most expensive places in the universe to live. We're also addressing climate change. We put together a group of 150 volunteers. We're sitting down, and those volunteers are working to come up with a plan that we can actually implement in Montgomery County. And the beauty of it is, and I want to thank Donald for this, is many underutilized people at the EPA who have volunteered for our committees. So they've got the time and the energy and the ideas, and I've got to say, I've sat and I've talked to some of these people. We've assembled an amazing collection of brain power to work on climate change. And I'm really optimistic that within the next few months we'll begin unraveling some of our plans to go forward. I've especially targeted our incinerator in Montgomery County. I opposed the incinerator when it was built more than a decade ago, and I'm still opposed to it, and we've got a way forward. We're looking at what we can do to increase our recycling rates. We're going to begin to do food recycling, which other people have done. This is not rocket science. We're getting into it, and we're going to make sure that we become leaders in recycling so we can manage our waste stream, we can get ourselves out of incineration. So this is what happens when you elect somebody who can actually lead. I have the ability to set direction and to set a tempo, and with the support of progressives in the community, we begin to change a dialogue. So I'm going to say, so what I'm going to say is, when you organize, you do win. Second, public financing is our friend. We need to learn how to use it. Third, don't just work within the one organization. Do what they did back in the 80s. Insert yourself in school boards, in neighborhood associations, and all of the groups where people in your community come together to talk about their community. We cannot surface as an organization or frankly as candidates in the months before an election. We have to be present so that when people are looking for candidates, they look around and they say, this person speaks really well. He understands the concerns of my community, and I wish he was interested in running, or she was interested in running for office. That's what we need to do. And so I encourage you, whatever you do here, double down wherever you live in your communities and do the work that you need to do in your communities so people look to you for the kind of leadership that people need. And so with that, I'll say thank you very much. I'm really, the thing that excites me about Bernie's campaign is he doesn't retreat. He's thought this out long. This is so clear on healthcare. He is so far down the road in thinking this thing out that somebody can't trip him up and force him to say, oh well, maybe not, maybe later. He knows what somebody said earlier. It works. It's ultimately affordable. We're paying too damn much right now, and nothing can be more expensive than the most expensive healthcare system in the world that we've already built. So he's got the ideas. He has them across a wide spread of issues. This is our year to win. We need to win.
Let me introduce you to one of those local leaders, Zola Shaw. Oftentimes we focus at the federal level, just like we did when our revolution was only one of 2 organizations to endorse Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the primary. But it's more important to fight at the local level, which is exactly what Zola is doing.
racism every single day and have personally experienced pay discrimination. However, the greatest impact on the future of Black and brown communities exists at the government policy level. And it's been centuries of policies that have created the racial inequities we see and experience today. Now, Montgomery County has a reputation for being a pretty forward-thinking place. However, when we started talking about racial equity in our county, having community conversations, listening to stories, and doing grassroots organizing, the truth about disparities and privileges surfaced. It felt like there were two different counties. So when our county council president, Nancy Navarro, and our county executive, Mark Elrich, decided to do a countywide study on racial disparities, the results and data further motivated communities to get engaged and act. We saw that race, by far, was one of the biggest factors affecting success outcomes for our county residents. Across income levels, we saw tremendous racial disparities. For example, in 2015, every single child expelled from the county's public school was Black or brown.
That ain't right.
Let me say that again. Black and brown children were the only children expelled from school in a county where white children that same year made the largest racial group. There was no disputing it. There it was, literally in black and white, the disparities and the privileges. The data proved to be one of the best tools we had as we put together our plan to achieve racial equity. Fast forward to November 2019. After a lot of hard work by a lot of people across communities, the Racial Equity and Social Justice Bill was passed. I'm proud to say that County Executive Mark Elrich, who was with us every single step of the way, signed the bill into law just this past week. All future bills to include a racial equity impact statement. The law requires each county department to submit a racial equity plan. It creates a new Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice within the executive branch. It establishes an advisory committee with 7 county representatives and 8 community members to oversee the implementation. Most of all, it puts Montgomery County front and center into nationwide efforts acknowledging that government institutions and policies help to create these disparities. Thus, government has a responsibility to address these disparities.
That's right.
While compelling us, the people, to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
We accomplished all of this by building a large, cohesive coalition. We organized people. We organized money.
Yeah.
We organized programs to build our power. There's so much work to be done. As we get ready for 2020, I look forward to building our power to make racial equity a reality in Montgomery County and all counties across our country.
We win! Good evening, brothers and sisters. When we organize, we win! When we fight, we win! When we organize, we win! When we fight, we win! Brothers and sisters from coast to coast, thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Richard Rodriguez. I'm a national board member with Our Revolution. I hail from the great state of Illinois. I helped found a local group called the Will County Progressives, and a big shout out to all of you out there. we're starting to form a local group called our Illinois Revolution. So organizing at a local level takes a lot of hard work, a lot of grit, right? Yeah. Many of you here are familiar with that. There's no shortcuts, there's no workarounds. We have to build from the bottom up. If we're going to build our revolution, that's what it's going to take. That's why in Illinois we're focused on organizing 5 collar counties around Chicago. We're going to create a statewide progressive powerhouse. We need to build support from the state, from coast to coast. With that being said, we're creating an agenda at a local level on issues that matter to our local communities, such as clean drinking water. From the community that I'm from, in the city of Joliet, we're faced with a crisis. We're running out of water in 10 years. We're the 3rd largest city in the state of Illinois. And many people that didn't believe in climate crisis, right, are starting to realize that it's real and it's hitting home. So in our county, we have a small community called Crete. And in Crete, there's lead in the water. I had the opportunity to visit this community, and it was a shame to see trucks delivering water to these homes. I had a chance to visit the residents from those homes. The fear that they had of the water that they've been drinking with lead, I can't even comprehend what they were going through. But that's a real fear in our community, and that's in my backyard, and that ain't right.
Not right.
Not right.
We need safe and healthy communities. We need to hold our elected officials accountable so they don't sell us out. So what does that mean? We organize. And we organize,
we win.
And we fight,
we win.
That's why we're supporting local candidates, part of our revolution. We endorse local candidates that will represent us, from our local school boards to our local city councils to our county boards to our state house. And we're also people running for Congress, right? And we're also supporting for president. Our man, Bernie Sanders. That work is also happening here in our local communities in Northern Virginia. Tonight, we're joined by one of our leaders, Kenny Bodie, who was recently elected to the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. Our brother, Kenny.
Good evening, revolutionaries. My name is Kenny Bodie, and I will be the supervisor-elect for the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, the Occoquan District. So, before I dive into my speech, I wanted to put a pin in something that Larry said. He talked about earlier how we've had folks from this revolution that have gone on to win their elections and folks that have fallen short. Well, 2 years ago, I was one of the first state-level candidates that got endorsed by our revolution. I fell short back then, but I did not go away into the silent night. I stayed involved, I got more involved, I organized, and this time around, I won. So when we organize, we win! Exactly. So, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about housing. Housing, as Senator Bernie Sanders says, is a human right. Housing, as our revolution says, is the foundation upon stability for every single person in our community. We can do that because when we know that when people don't have stable housing, they fall through the cracks. They can't get a job, they can't get a driver's license, they can't get into higher education, they can't get anything they need to move forward. And I felt this personally because 3 years ago, on top of everything else that was crappy that happened in 2016, I lost my mom to homelessness and substance abuse. We know what happens when people fall through the cracks. And we also know that this is an intersectional issue. You've heard about it in terms of the workers, you've heard about it in terms of climate crisis, you've heard about it in terms of education. We also know that a lot of this stuff has historical roots in classism and racism. Housing, I don't have to go back that far. We have redlining. We have the lending crisis where over time, although the tools of the 1% have become more evolved, their outcomes are the same. The working poor stays down, the middle class shrinks, and the 1% gets enriched and empowered. And we cannot have that anymore. So, what's the economic argument for fair housing for all?
We know that when folks, like I said, do not have housing, they can't get access to jobs, can't get access to an education, and they fall through, they end up in emergency rooms where they can't get health care and what have you. So when you talk to people about this, it just makes financial sense that instead of letting people fall on the street and become homeless, you put them in a house. You help empower them to have a stable living accommodation so they can actually do right by themselves and their families. Local governments can be on the front lines of this, such as what I'm going to be serving in next month. Local governments can put this through zoning, through affordable housing ordinances, housing policies, investing in the homelessness prevention services, and wraparound services. On the national level, we see Bernie Sanders and our revolution have talked about actually investing in people, investing in trillions of dollars to help empower fair housing, empower affordable housing ordinances, empower actually putting people in homes all throughout this country and building the kind of homes that the working class can afford, not just the rich CEOs and the corporations. So I will leave you with this. We begin fighting for justice at all levels by fighting, as Bernie Sanders says, from the bottom on up. We fight for revolution and real change in our community from the bottom on up. We will fight for housing with a housing revolution throughout this country because we know when we have a revolution, real change happens. So what's the solution?
Our revolution!
What's the solution?
Our revolution!
What is the solution?
Our revolution!
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
I'm back. This is the last part of the issues that unite us all. So remember this triangle, right? The issues are why we get involved. We want to be happier. We want to govern, not just protest. We use elections. You've heard from amazing elected people, and it's the campaigns. We're not going to win all the time, as you just heard. And it's the party building in some way. Whether it's the Democratic Party or in other parts of the country, it's independent parties. But it's some kind of party building. So when we elect people, we have an organization like our revolution to hold them accountable. It's not just about the individual. Well, this last section is dear to my heart. This is workers' rights.
Yeah.
And there's amazing people out here who you won't hear from, who I've worked with and I know that have spent decades fighting for workers' rights. But we're going to hear from strikers at TransDev.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to hear from a brother who helped lead and continues to the fight with Amazon in Arlington. And we're going to hear from an elected member of the House of Delegates in Virginia, Lee Carter, who is leading the fight to restore right to work. After that, I will say a couple of words, and then we have a reception, and I'll tell you about how you get a free drink. But before all that, I want to introduce my brother, amazing brother in the struggle, the national president of the American Postal Workers Union, who will introduce the strikers. And Mark Dimenstein has been with us forever. And his life in the APWU has gone on for decades. And he shows that from the bottom up in a postal mail ballot, you can get elected to the highest office in that national union. And he just got reelected again. Woo! But just as importantly, he supports and has supported from the beginning Labor for Our Revolution, Labor for Bernie, and Our Revolution. I'm so glad that he is here to talk about the strike at TransDev for a minute and introduce them, but also to say it's not just the right to strike, it's the strikers who put it on the line who fight for all of us.
Well, good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening. Very good to be here with all of you. For when it comes to this rigged, corporate and Wall Street dominated system, we indeed do need a political revolution. It is my real honor to introduce Latrice Smith and the other striking ATU Amalgamated Transit workers here tonight. Latrice, a striking Metro bus operator with Local 689. They've been on strike for 47 days and counting.
That's right.
She's going to share and discuss her personal experiences with the cost of privatization, an issue very dear also to postal workers, and the critical role that unions play in protecting living wage jobs, protecting public safety, and standing up and protecting the public commons and the public good. Please welcome Sister Latrice and the other 18 youth strikers here tonight.
Good afternoon. I'm going to piggyback off of something that he said. What I'm going to discuss don't just affect us in this industry because it's spilling over. It's going to continue to spill over. And if we allow this to happen to us, it's going to happen to you, and you. So my message today is not to be settled. Please pass it along, because the way it affects not just you, it affects generations to come. We want to say we want the best for our children, our grandchildren, and now is the time. Now is the time.
That's right.
What we do today is what happens for our future. Our revolution is not a change. It's a movement for the future, for our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. Privatization, it does not work. It happens at the expense of good jobs, equal work for equal pay, workers' rights, and our ability to support ourselves and our families. Transdev company was brought in to manage WMATA, also known as Metro. Transdev is asking drivers to operate unsafe, illegal buses that don't have proper inspection and or registration. Perform work without getting paid and using various tactics to avoid paying us fairly and honestly, including undercutting our health care.
That ain't right.
I'd like to give you one example. About 6 weeks ago, before we went on strike, our drivers was asked to operate a Metro bus that had failed a brake inspection 6 times. Let me repeat that. Brakes. 6 times that will not pass a basic inspection. Driving unsafe buses put passengers, drivers, and everyone on the road at risk and should not be tolerated. Unfair and unsafe working conditions are the main reason for us going on strike. If it weren't for the strength and support of our local, we would not be able to bring these safety issues to management without fear of losing our jobs. As it stands, Transdev is trying to use management rights to limit the access to the bus garage for our local. This is one of the many issues our local is fighting for now. I want to thank the commitment of our local ATU 689 and the international and all of the other supporting groups, people, and everyone around to join us in our fight. In doing this, I was supposed to say, join us in our strike, but it's not just a strike, it's our fight. This is our fight, not one person, ours. our collective efforts have lent encouragement to the nearly 800 Fairfax County connector bus drivers who are also having issues with TransDev to go on strike. Northern Virginia is shut down. Just to let you know, it's day 4 for them, day 47 for us. We're not going anywhere. We're here
One
to
day
stay as
longer,
long-
each day stronger. One day longer, each day stronger. One day longer, each day stronger.
We're here to stay. And thanks to our revolution for having us here today. If anyone wants to donate to our strike fund, please visit our international website, www.atu.org. Thank you all for your support.
Next, from our revolution, Arlington, right? Arlington. Roshan, which rhymes with ocean, Abraham. He instructed me to learn to say his name correctly. So now everybody knows. Thank you. And more importantly is the struggle that he's helped lead at Amazon to do whatever we can do in this moment and beyond to deal with this gigantic, not only billionaire leader, he's worth over $100 billion, it's disgusting, but for the rights of workers there and for the community in terms of what Amazon is bringing to Northern Virginia. Roshan.
Thank you all. It's kind of amazing to share the stage with such incredible people. And I'm honored and humbled. Last year, Amazon decided to expand its empire into Northern Virginia, into Arlington, just across the river. And at that time, lots of state and local officials, practically every elected official, including the 5-member board of Arlington County, comprised completely of self-proclaimed progressive Democrats. All of them said that this would be a great development for the surrounding economy. There's some notable exceptions, and most of them are in this room. But even before Amazon decided to invade Arlington, our Revolution Arlington and the For Us Not Amazon Coalition, and now the new Athena National Coalition called Athena for All, have been sounding the alarm that this is bad news for our local economy, and especially for our low-income, working class, and black and brown brothers and sisters in Arlington and the surrounding areas. As you might expect, our electeds made no effort to reach out to these communities. We did, though.
That's right.
And all we have to do is look in Seattle to see what the Amazon effect does. Exploding rents, turbocharged gentrification, and homelessness that has reached a level of state crisis. While this is happening, Amazon, who had the audacity to tell our county board that they're good corporate citizens. Now, of course, the county board didn't push back on that. But while this is happening in Seattle, Amazon is spending millions to fight against democratic reforms like the head tax and to support corporate cronies in elections against the true progressive politicians. What Amazon has done is they've conned our leaders to make those of us who already live here, who already work here, who already are here making this a great community, they've conned our leaders to make us pay $1 trillion corporation owned by the world's richest man to do something they were already going to do. Just look at New York. Now, brothers and sisters in New York, they pounded the pavement and they kept their state from spending $3.5 billion for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And all that money that is being sent to Amazon or any other corporation, those are our resources. And those resources should be going towards things like building affordable housing and creating sensible economic development that builds community wealth instead of exporting money into the pockets of billionaires. One thing that our electeds kept telling us is that a rising tide raises all ships. But that only happens if you're above water. And unfortunately, a majority of Americans are already drowning. And that rising tide, it's only going to push them down further. And our electeds are doing this for a corporation whose attacks against workers are well documented. The poor working conditions in their warehouses is well known. And their fight against unionization has been well documented. Amazon continues to fight against its workers. That's right. And on top of that, it's Amazon who fuels Trump's deportation machine. Yep. They provide the tech and the support that helps ICE target our Latinx brothers and sisters. Right. And they're also providing surveillance equipment to our cops. I didn't know that. It's awful. It gets worse. Now, our resources are not there to be given as handouts to corporations. No. They are not there to make the rich richer and worsen economic inequality. No. We can foster job creation and wage growth with cost-effective and sustainable alternatives that invest directly in local residents. And these are things Bernie Sanders has been fighting for since he was a mayor in Burlington, Vermont. All resources should go to progressive priorities that include expanding public transit, ensuring that every child has a great education, and that includes college. And supporting the creation of worker-owned cooperatives so profits can go to the people. And fighting to make public banking a reality and investing in solutions to affordable housing like community land trust, something Bernie did in Burlington back in the 80s. In the 60s. Bernie Sanders has a smart plan for economic development, and that doesn't include throwing more money at billionaires. He knows we need a comprehensive national approach that includes affordable housing, good jobs to rebuild our infrastructure, and fight climate change. Even though Amazon's going to expand into Virginia, we will continue the fight against their exploitive practice and for good jobs and economic development that grows wealth in our communities. And as I've been standing here listening to all the other wonderful speakers, the thing that comes through is all of these issues intersect. That's right. When we are fighting against corporate power, we are fighting for immigrant justice. When we are fighting for the environment, we are fighting for racial justice. And when we are fighting for Medicare for all and universal college, we are fighting for economic justice. And we will do this with the help of all of you and our revolution activists and allies around the country. You could come to the ORA general meeting tomorrow, 7 p.m. So, I want to end by asking you one question. What's the solution? Our revolution! What's the solution?
now our last and an amazing speaker, Lee Carter. Many have talked about the fact that now in Virginia, Democrats are in, quote, control of the state government. But what we say here, Lee, is any old D just won't do. We heard from Yasmin. But Lee Carter is us. We were proud to have endorsed Lee Carter when he ran. In many ways, he was inspired by Bernie Sanders to run in 2016. He's a true hero in every sense of the word. He stands for all of us, and he stands for repeal of right to work in Virginia.
Thank you so much. How y'all doing tonight? You better than that. I said, how y'all doing tonight? My name's Lee Carter. I'm a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. I represent the 50th District. Now that's the city of Manassas and parts of western Prince William County. Proud to be recently re-elected. And I'm the only socialist in the Virginia General Assembly. So fun. But I didn't start off that way. I don't come from a normal background for a politician, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a realtor. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar who did 10 years consulting at McKinsey. I'm an electronics repairman by trade. And I don't have a college degree. When I got out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. I had been told all my life that that's a way to do good, but I didn't realize that my willingness to serve was going to be stolen from me and exploited in service of a foreign policy that values control over the global south more than it does human life. So I got out at the end of my contract, and I moved to Northern Virginia for work. I was fixing cancer therapy equipment. And I did that job for a while, and I loved it, but there's only so long you can work 70 hours a week. So I started looking for something a little more stable. I ended up installing lighting controls, and it didn't take long to get hurt at work. And I found out firsthand what happens when you need help and you don't have a union there to have your back.
There you go.
A non-union electrician had miswired an emergency exit sign and connected it to one of my communication wires. Instead of 24 volts DC, that load-bearing neutral put 245 volts AC on that line. I got that in one hand and out the other, and thankfully it didn't stop my heart. But I blew my back out pulling away from that panel. I couldn't walk more than 50 feet at a stretch for about 2 months. And the workers' comp docs just kept bouncing me around and trying to give me pills to get me out the door. And you wonder why we have an opioid problem. I had to pay out of pocket for a doctor to actually figure out what was wrong with my back and get me back on my feet. And when I called my boss and said, hey, I'm ready to go back to work. And they said, we have work, but we don't have any for you. Because the company you were contracting for doesn't want you on their job sites anymore. They had the audacity to say that in those words. And so I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I filed a workers' comp claim. I was a Virginia employee of a Georgia company, and I got hurt in Illinois. And in all 3 states, they said, yeah, we probably owe him money, but we don't owe him money here. It took 4 years of fighting to get a check for $9,000, y'all. I had won 2 elections by then. But I wasn't a socialist at that point. I didn't know what that meant. So I decided to run for office, and I said, we need some reform in our workers' compensation system so that people know that they're not going to get fired when they get hurt on the job. That's a reform. That's one specific thing that needed to change. And I realized that while I was in the military, I had some of the best health care that you could possibly get on a government-run plan, and I said, we need to make sure that we join the rest of the industrialized world and have a health care system that's guarantees everyone can see it happen. But that's a reform. That's one thing that we need.
And the cost of my rent was going up every single month, even though my income wasn't. And I said, we need affordable housing for all, but that is a reform. That's one thing that we need. So I was already running when I heard about this guy who was running for president, an independent senator from Vermont who everyone expected would get 3% in Iowa and drop out. And he was going around the country talking about how we needed a revolution. He was talking about how we needed an economy that works for everyone, not just the millionaires and billionaires. And he was going around saying all the things that I had always thought about how we could build a more fair society, but never had the words to express, and he called himself a socialist. So I Googled, what is socialism? And the more I read, the more I realized, ah, damn it, that's me. That's going to make this real hard. But that is what made me realize that we need not just reform, we need a revolution. And as I look out in this room, I see that revolution here today. And ever since I decided to run for office, I have proudly fought to make sure that the Commonwealth of Virginia is truly a commonwealth, to make sure that it's a place where wealth is truly common, where everyone can live and work and not have to worry about how they're going to put food on the table, not have to worry about how they're going to pay the rent, not have to worry about whether or not they can see a doctor or put their kids through college, or whether they're going to be discriminated against based on who they are, or who they were born to be. And it's going to take a revolution to get there. Now, what is a revolution? It's a change of who's in charge. Yes. For too long, the corporations and the millionaires and billionaires have been in charge of this country and the world, and we need a revolution to say that it is the people who are impacted by the decisions made in the halls of power that are going to be making those decisions. And that doesn't happen with a single election. We need a president who will, as he says, have a workers' government in Washington. But that's not the entirety of a revolution. We need people in state houses throughout the country who are going to fight to make sure that we have a workers' government, but that is not a revolution. We need people in local government, like my good friend Kenny Bodie, who's going to make sure that we have housing policy that works for everyone who needs a roof over their head, but that is not a revolution. A revolution is people standing up and fighting back against corporate power everywhere that it rears its ugly head, on every level, every election, every picket line, every single injustice needs to be pushed back against by the people so that we can have outcomes that benefit the people. That is a revolution. And it doesn't take much to take your part. If you can hold a sign on a picket line, you have a place in this revolution. That's right. If you can make a phone call, you have a place in this revolution. That's right. If you can knock on a door, you have a place in this revolution. If you look around and you see that Virginia has 11 empty houses for every homeless man, woman, and child, and you tremble with rage, you have a place in this revolution. If you recognize that the only thing in this country's history that has made life better for working people is unions, you have a place in this revolution. I'm going to tell you about one part of the fight for this revolution. Repealing right to work. Now that name is an intentional misnomer. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where it came from. There was a guy in the 1940s named Vance Muse. And Vance Muse was proud to be racist. Well, there's some things he said about his right to work bill that I can repeat and some things that I can't. But one of the things that he said as he was lobbying for this law in state houses throughout the South in the 1940s, including Virginia, was that if state governments don't pass right-to-work laws, that white women and men are going to be forced to join organizations with, and there was a long string of slurs there, who they will have to call brother or else lose their jobs. He lobbied for that law in state houses throughout the South until the day that he died in 1950. And let me tell you, Virginia passed ours in 1947. You can do the math. And that law is there specifically to divide the working class along racial lines and to make sure that people are fighting white against black and not worker against owner like we should. In Virginia, we've lived under this law, this oppressive, racist, anti-worker law for 73 years, thereabouts, and that is 73 too many. So last year, I put in a bill to repeal right to work in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And there were a lot of people that were not particularly happy about that. There were a lot of Democrats that were not particularly happy about that. But they were real happy to take union money in their re-election campaigns, let me tell you. The Speaker of the House, though, Kirk Cox, a Republican from Colonial Heights, he was happy to see me put in that bill because he thought this is going to be a great opportunity for my members to fundraise. So he sent that bill to the Rules Committee. That's his personal committee, for now. Because he was going to send it to the floor and make everybody take a recorded vote. But a funny thing happened on the way to the floor. Several thousand union members and teachers showed up in the Capitol, and they said, you know what? This House Bill 1806, we really like it. And we are going to be watching how you vote on it. And Kirk Cox's Personal Rules Committee referred it to Commerce and Labor, where, what do you know, there wasn't time for a hearing. But he's not going to have the Rules Committee anymore because he's not going to have a majority anymore. So this coming legislative session, I am putting the repeal bill back in to make sure that we finally get rid of one of these last vestiges of racist, anti-worker discriminatory policy in Virginia law. Virginia will be the first state to overturn their right-to-work law through legislation. And that's going to happen because of the revolution that I am looking at in this room. It's going to happen because people are going to show up in Richmond and demand that that law be repealed. It's not because I'm there, it's because y'all are there. So our revolution, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you all so much for standing up and fighting. Thank you all so much for fighting for the future that we need.
From that hug, his back is recovered. Okay. So, amazing group of speakers, group of issues, group of candidates. And remember the strategy that we have. It's to unite the issues that motivate us all with elections, with permanent sustainable organization. Call it party building, call it your Our Revolution group, call it allies. But it all rests on growing our groups that you all come from. You all got a card like this when you came in, or like this. There were two different versions. You get a ticket like this when you turn in this. And this ticket, I lost one, is for 2 drinks at a very expensive hotel, sadly. And more importantly, we can get to know each other wherever we come from, and we can recommit to the notion that when we organize, we win! And what's the solution? Our revolution! And we're going to organize to get there. It's not just our speaking. As my great-grandmother said, I'll watch your feet, not your mouth. What are you doing? Not only do we sign up tonight, most people in this room have already signed up, but take one card, and in the next week, sign up one member to bring into your group. That's right. Everybody can do that. One member to bring into your group. Okay, solidarity forever. Enjoy the reception, and good night.